I think we've been working on it about a year now. It's been a little bit postponed because of COVID and all of the drama happening in 2020. But it seems like a completely appropriate time to talk about the Constitution and why it still matters. The series is called The Constitution Line by Line, and it stars you. And we figured that you were a good guy to do this because you've been marinating in the Constitution supposedly since you were in diapers. I don't know if that's exactly true, but you've been thinking about this stuff a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say since I was in diapers. One might argue that since I was in utero, but that brings up a whole separate set of topics. Whether infants, before they're born, can hear and understand, I don't know.
But for you, you would sit around the dinner table with your dad and your family, and you would argue about things like Article 1.
Right. And, of course, every family in America does that, as they should. We certainly did that in my family. It was a rite of passage. It was something we enjoyed doing, and something I think every family ought to consider doing, simply because it reminds people of their place in the world. It reminds Americans of their relationship to their government. Perhaps most importantly, it reminds them that government isn't everything. Government is just the official collective use of coercive force. It's nothing more than that. And the Constitution consists of a set of rules about how official collective force may and may not be utilized.
A document of unique genius, I think you believe.
Yes, of unique genius, written by wise men who I believe were raised up by God to that very purpose. These were unusually gifted individuals who happened to be living on the same part of the same planet at the same time. We're very fortunate that they were brought together at that time in defense of liberty. They really, most of them, I think, had relatively little to gain from the revolutionary effort and then later from the constitutional effort, other than the fact that they wanted a land that would be better for their posterity. Certainly would have been easier for them, in many respects, for them to have come up with a different, more efficient system of government, and it probably would have inured to their political and financial benefit to have concentrated power more than they did. Instead, they dispersed it, which is exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah. I sort of pined for the days when our political leaders would put a little skin in the game, and in this case, they were putting their heads on the block.
Yes.
And I think few people that don't know the history appreciate that they were sacrificing everything, their property, their families, and potentially their lives if King George got a hold of them.
Yeah, absolutely. This was their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor, and there was no exaggeration to say that. In those moments in particular, it would have been tempting to fall for what my wife and I have come to call emergency socialism, which is also known as socialism. I mean, anytime government exceeds its bounds and starts doing things that government can't do and government isn't supposed to do, it's always under the guise of an emergency. There is always an emergency that is at the heart of a drift in that direction. And that's why the Constitution's never been more important than it is right now.